Welcome to Happy Hour with Bill Fayne. Today I'm hosting Happy Hour from 4 to 5 here in Las Vegas, joined by legendary Las Vegas maestro Bill Fayne. Bill Fayne has played with and opened for legends on stages all over the world, including Joan Rivers, Milton Berle, Buddy Hackett, Don Rickles, Alan King, Bob Newhart, Sammy Davis Jr., and so many more. He's hung out with the rich and the famous and even the infamous, from the Prince of Monaco to Bill Cosby. We're going to hear some stories about that. But it's Bill Fayne's own tireless work and natural talent as a composer and performer, and his nearly 50-year collaboration with former Las Vegas Entertainer of the Year Clint Holmes as his longtime musical director that made Bill Fayne a towering figure and living legend in his own right. We're going to talk about his life, his music, his many highs, a few lows, hear some stories, have a few laughs, and hear his thoughts about the past, present, and future of the Las Vegas entertainment scene, now in the midst of a shutdown. Or so we've been told there's a shutdown, but don't tell that to Bill Fayne. Welcome to Happy Hour, Bill Fayne. Nice to have you as my guest.
Thank you. Well, thanks for that intro. When you started talking, my dog decided to come and sit on my lap. So, and anyone that's worked with me knows my dog, Saki. I'm so honored that you chose to have me on. And it has been a very difficult year for most of my friends that are performers. We're all hopeful, and we all have hopes and dreams and things we're planning. The most difficult thing for me and for people of my age or older or a little younger is that to lose a year of your life at this stage of your life seems to me to take a greater toll than it would on someone who is 20 or 30 or even 40. It's a terrible feeling to lose a year, especially when a year ago in January, I had plans for shows through August, and it was looking like it was going to be one of the best years that I've had. I had so many shows on the books, so many things planned, including 3 shows at the Starbright Theater, 2 shows a month at the Summit Restaurant. I was supposed to musical direct a show at Super Summer Theater last summer, among other things. So that makes it even more difficult. But I'm just certainly hopeful that those things will return once everything else returns.
Well, I hope so, Bill, because you have so much more to give, and I'll be talking about later on in the show some of the impressions I had. I have had the great fortune of seeing Bill Fayne perform both in the background and in the up front as a singer, and obviously as a pianist. That's the music the instrument that he has mastered. I think I've seen him 25, maybe 30 times here in Las Vegas. A lot of those shows were free. And I think the wonderful thing about you, Bill, is that you're so giving. I mean, for those living in Las Vegas, this used to be a city that had a lot of live entertainment. And of course, a lot of free live entertainment, lounge shows, things like that. And of course, that has disappeared. Now let's take away COVID for a moment. But even prior to COVID, we weren't seeing as many live free shows. And you've always been an advocate for that and been a big part of that atmosphere, that environment. Tell us why live entertainment, particularly free entertainment and lounge shows, are so important to Las Vegas.
Well, what I have found in the last 10 years, I stopped working with Clint as my main source of work in 2010, and decided that at that point I wanted to stay home. My family is here. I have I had two, now I have three grandkids. Um, and I found that I wanted to focus on two things that I didn't think there was enough of in Las Vegas: cabaret and musical theater. And I found that the audience for those types of shows are the retirement communities. And those are people that are living on their retirement. They can't afford the prices of the shows that are on the Strip. So I started working more locally and developed a relationship with Sun City Summerlin and Sun City Anthem, McDonald Ranch, some of those communities, Solara, those communities that have over 55 years old communities. And they love the types of shows that I've done. And even though they're not always free, the prices are reasonable. You can't go to see some of the shows like I've done, that I've done for 10, 12, 15, or even $20. Some of the big shows that I've done, Company, Les Mis, Guys and Dolls, where the tickets to see a full Broadway show with a full orchestra and large cast, you can't go to see a show like that for $25. But that's the kind of things that I've wanted to do. I've wanted to make Broadway and cabaret music available to the masses. And you know, I hate to say it, but the bottom line for the casinos is, you know, you have to make X amount of dollars to make it worthwhile. So that's basically why I've done what I've done.
Bill, you obviously music is such a fundamental part of your life. You're synonymous with music, and I have no talent in music, but I certainly enjoy music. And one of the things that I saw a couple of days ago was a documentary I was watching. It was on country music, believe it or not. And it was they were interviewing Fred Forrester, who's a record producer out of Nashville. And he said something that I thought was just extremely profound. I'd like you to listen to it and then comment upon it. He said the sign of a great song is not the sound, it's the experience. In other words, it's not just listening to something, it's that it moves you. You experience a song, you don't hear a song. And as somebody who's watched you perform on stage, sitting at a piano, or in some cases singing opera, I can tell the music moves you. Talk about that, please.
Well, that's interesting that you would say that about country music, because country music is most of the time about the story. And that's why people love country music, because, oops, I lost, what happened? What happened? I touched my phone.
Video here, yeah.
Let me get back. Darn. Where are we?
There we go.
There we go.
All right.
I touched my phone. People can relate to those stories. The same thing. Now, opera is a different thing, because most of the time, many of the people in the opera don't understand the language. At the Metropolitan Opera in New York, behind every seat, they are scrolling the translation. So that helps. But more often than not, it's the lyric that draws you in, that puts you in a time and place, makes you feel what you feel. When it's a combination of the music and the lyric, that's when it really touches you.
We're going to walk down memory lane, if we may now. Bill Fayne was born William Allen Marks on December 17, 1926 at Women's Hospital in Manhattan, New York City, New York. He grew up about a mile away from Yankee Stadium, but Bill, you and your family did what many New Yorkers did in post-war America back in the late 40s, early 50s. You moved to a place called Levittown on Long Island. Actually, Massapequa, I think, was where you were in Long Island.
Well, when I was 2, we moved to Levittown, lived there for a couple of years, and then moved to Massapequa, or as they were, people refer to it, because there's so many Italians and Jews there, it's referred to as Mazza Pizza. And that's where I grew up and lived my life until college. I went to Plain Edge High School and had some great growing up there.
I have to ask you, I know you were, music was kind of in your blood. I think you said you were a distant relative of George Jessel, who is obviously a legend from New York City in vaudeville days. In fact, if you know music history, I believe he gave Judy Garland her stage name. I'm speaking of George Jessel. And again, you have at least a trace of bloodline there. I have to ask you about musicians. Maybe it's true for artists in general, but do you think that musicians are born, or do they make themselves? Is it nature or nurture? Are great musicians just born? What do you think?
I'm not sure how to answer that. My parents were not musically inclined. I don't know why I fell in love with it, but I did. My mom was not a stage mother, but she did encourage me. She took me for accordion lessons when I was 9 years old, and singing lessons and dancing lessons. And I was actually in my first little play at I think about 13 or 14, and I did a TV show when I was I think about 10. But I always loved it, and I'm not sure why. Some people think it's in the DNA. I don't know where mine came from, other than my love of music, and I guess my need as a kid to get some attention and be in the spotlight. I'm not sure if I can really answer that.
Well, Bill, you were, again, I've read some of the things you've written in your biography, which is a fascinating read. And you mentioned that contrary to a lot of kids who grow up and become successful artists or musicians, you were actually quite proficient at sports. And I mean, you were kind of gifted all around in many ways. And I believe that for your bar mitzvah, age 12 or 13, you were given a very special gift that changed your life. Obviously, it's a piano. Did you just immediately take on to that instrument, or did, like a lot of kids, they go through piano lessons and kind of regret it? Did you just love it from the moment you set out on the piano?
Well, it's interesting. I got a piano for my bar mitzvah, and I had played accordion, so I did read music. My piano teacher was a man named Walter Stein, who was the first bassoonist with the New York Philharmonic, but also a brilliant pianist and a musical director, who I had met doing The King and I, which was my very first show I ever did. I was the Prince Chaufa Chula Longhorn. And so he was my teacher, but he taught a very different way. He didn't believe in teaching scales and technique. He believed in you had a piece of music, and as you discovered some of the problems in the piece, you learned how to work around them. That in later life did me no good, because my technical prowess is not that great. So I started taking lessons with him at 13, but at 16, I played the Rhapsody in Blue with my high school orchestra. If you'd asked me to play it today, I couldn't. I worked on it and was able to master it and it's it's almost like what I have gone through when I've done opera roles or musical theater roles. I work on it and I work on it and I memorize it, and the day after the show is done, I can't remember a thing.
Oh, wow.
It's very strange. And believe it or not, I have dreams about that, about going on stage and forgetting the lyrics.
That's a nightmare.
And I'm always lyrically challenged because I've always had the lyrics and the music in front of me on the piano. I don't bother to memorize, and it's often a problem. Just one thing comes to mind. I was doing probably the biggest Stephen Sondheim show that I've done to date, and I wanted to sing the opening number from an unknown musical of Sondheim's called The Frogs, and it's a very, very, as Sondheim is, a very long, wordy song. And I put the sheets of music down on the stage in front of me, and I did it with a track. So I walked out, excuse me, to sing this song, looked down, and the lyrics were too far away. I couldn't read them. So I literally got through the very first page or two of the song, and I stopped. And it's the only time I've ever done this in my life. I stopped and said, I'm sorry, I can't do this number. Let's skip to the first number in the show. And unfortunately, I have a video of that, which I'll never show anyone. But like I say, I've always been lyrically challenged that way. Even songs I've written and songs I've done dozens and dozens of times, unless I have the lyric in front of me, I can't, or the music, I can't, I don't memorize well. Oops, my dog's getting down. Okay.
You're in good company. I believe the same was true for Frank Sinatra, particularly when he performed toward the end of his career. He had to have monitors. Marlon Brando was famous for having to have cue cards when he was on the set doing movies. And, this is not an uncommon thing where very gifted people just have to, maybe their minds are filled with other stimuli and they just have to, it's hard to memorize lyrics. Maybe that's it, huh?
Well, and people have their little tricks to memorize things. My friend Clint, when he's memorizing, he writes everything down. He writes down, and that helps him to memorize. Yeah. I haven't learned that lesson yet.
Yeah, I think writing does help you. I think writing does create something in the mind. At least it gives you more of an impression. I have to ask you about growing up, and you talked about your love of cabaret, obviously musical theater and so forth. But you also grew up in the 1960s, and that was a time of profound change. You're in high school in the 60s and going on to college, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But you didn't seem to be susceptible to a lot of the music of, say, your peers, which is rock and roll and other forms of music. I know you love rock and you love all forms of music. I've seen you perform them, but you were kind of how would I say, a bird of a different feather in a way. Can you talk about that?
Well, at home, my parents played Frank Sinatra. And to this day, I love the Frank Sinatra album.
Here we go.
Songs for Swingin' Lovers. I've Got You Under My Skin, and songs like that were on there. So I always loved that kind of music. In the 60s and in high school, I listened to doo-wop. I even had a little four voice doo-wop group, and we used to sing at some of the high school dances. And then towards the end of high school, I fell in love with musical theater. when I went away to a summer stock company as an apprentice and got deeply involved in musical theater. And then when I went to college, never having heard or sung opera, I fell in love with that, and that was my focus: singing classical music and singing opera as a baritone, wishing I was a tenor, which I think every baritone wishes. So when I graduated from college and started teaching, I taught high school music and theater. So when I started teaching, I realized, because the students knew everything from the 60s, because that's what they grew up with. And I realized that I missed the Beach Boys and the Beatles and Rolling Stones, and I missed all that music. So the students really introduced me to all of that. And then I fell in love with the Carpenters and the Fifth Dimension and all the vocal groups, because vocal music was always my first love.
You know, Bill, I saw that you began your college years, and you were majoring, I believe, in piano, and then you changed your major to voice. Now, I guess maybe I'm just a little younger than you, but I've never heard of somebody getting a degree in voice, or what that means. What was your ambition? You know, what do you do with I don't know what it's called, a voice degree or whatever.
Well,
what does that mean?
My degree was really in music education.
Uh-huh.
I was going to be a music teacher. That was my goal. It wasn't in performance, but as my college career, I actually started out my freshman year. I got into the college jazz band playing piano, but it was orientation weekend, my first weekend at Fredonia, and that's when they showed you your curriculum, what you had to do. And as a pianist, you have to accompany a lot of other students. The repertoire you had to learn, and like I said a few minutes ago, technically I wasn't that great a pianist. So I decided, well, I sing a little bit. I'll change to voice, and I went in, to audition, I guess, for one of the voice teachers, and I was singing, like I sang. I was a pop singer. I wasn't a classically trained singer. And literally within the first year of my freshman year of college, I started to transform into a trained singer and got involved in the opera program, and ultimately became the president of the opera club, and sang roles like Falstaff, and was in La Boheme and Carmen and Don Giovanni, and really grew to love opera. Still, to me, of all the different forms of music, the one thing that moves me more than anything else is opera, and particularly Puccini opera.
Wow. When you were in college, you met somebody who would ultimately become really affixed to your name as much, certainly in the Las Vegas entertainment scene, and that's Clint Holmes. You came from very different backgrounds. Clint Holmes grew up in Buffalo, and of course you were from New York City and Long Island, but you met there in college, and that started a half-century collaboration all over the world. Talk about what drew you and maybe what drew him to you as far as collaborating in music.
Well, we met because he sang with the college jazz band, and I played piano. Ultimately, I also accompanied him at his voice lessons. I don't know why we got to be so friendly, other than the fact that he at one point he probably said, you want to do this gig with me? And I remember driving to Toronto to play for something, I don't remember what. And on the way back, we were stopped. He was driving his old green Mercury, and we were stopped by a policeman, and I guess he was speeding or something. And Clint offered the policeman a chocolate chip cookie that his mother had made. And I don't know why I just remembered that, but we got to be friends. We both had new, wonderful girlfriends at the time. We used to hang out at the student union, and where they had a piano, and sometimes he'd get up and sing, and I'd play. And we became really good friends. I remember going to his house, which was actually in Farnham, New York, which was halfway between Fredonia and Buffalo, and meeting his family and singing at his house with his sister, and meeting his mother, who was a voice teacher. And it was we just became great friends. Unfortunately, he flunked out after the freshman year.
No.
he got a very low number in the draft, and but was fortunate because he was also a trombone player. He got into the Army School of Music and got into the band there, and ultimately became a great vocal soloist with the Army, the chorus. But we stayed in touch over time, and I think it was in 1977. He had a band. I had my band at the time. I was traveling with a band, and we were working at the same hotel, the Hyatt Hotel in Atlanta. And we had dinner, and he said, "Did you ever think of getting rid of your band and just being my musical director?" And I'd been on the road with my band for 6 years. I left teaching to start a band, which was weird, but I did. And I said, "Boy, that sounds like a great idea." So in 1977, after my band did a USO tour in Germany, Clint and I started working, and we worked together for almost 35 years.
Right. I know you played a lot of, some of your first gigs with Clint Holmes were in Atlantic City, a lot of the casinos there. And I'm going to read a list of the people that you and Clint opened up for, played with, and in some cases, were fired by.
Hold on just a second.
Okay. We'll be right back. A good watchdog.
Stop. Come on. Stop. Sorry about that.
It doesn't happen to you on stage.
Well, no, not yet anyway.
All right, so I was saying that in Atlantic City, you opened, and in some cases were even fired by some of these people. But I mentioned earlier Don Rickles, Alan King, Joan Rivers, Bill Cosby, Tony Fields, Buddy Hackett, and Milton Berle. You can tell any story you want, or none of them if you don't want, but I believe that you had some, maybe just say a run-in with Uncle Milty and also Buddy Hackett. You got to give us at least one story here, Bill.
Milton Berle is, I think, the funniest one.
Okay.
We were opening for Uncle Milty, and you know, if you were a child of the 50s and 60s, that was a big deal. But he was interesting. We did a weekend with him, and opening night, Clint was doing his 30 minutes before Milton's show came on, and someone in the very front of the stage had their arms on the stage. And Clint said, which is something that a lot of people have said, something like, are you in show business? And the guy said no. And Clint said, well, then get your hands off the stage. All of a sudden, there's a clap from backstage. And so after the show, Milton Berle called Clint into his dressing room and me and said, you're stealing my act. And Clint said, no, well, why? What did I do? So that happened the first night. Also, I was wearing a brown velvet jacket, very dressy, beautiful, and Milton said, and tell your musical director never wear brown on stage. So that was the first night. Also he said to Clint, what's your first number? And the first number he did was, I can't smile without you, can't smile without you. That was the opening number. And Milton said, your opening number's too slow. It's got to be, can't smile without you, can't smile without. And so Clint said,
It's a very monologue song, Rod. He wants to speed it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Clint said, of course, being very respectful, said, okay, we never sped it up, but we did it the way we do it. Second night, Clint walks back to the piano and talking to me on stage, as he always often did. And there's a conductor's baton inside the piano. And Clint picked it up and looked at me and said, what, do you think you're going to conduct an orchestra? And all of a sudden, backstage, we hear, and after the show, back into Uncle Milty's room, and he said, that's my prop. You're using my props. So those kind of things happen with, but the other thing is Clint always got a standing ovation after his 30 minutes. And in the middle of the standing ovation, Milton came out and said, Clint Holmes, and then you whisper in Clint's room ear, get off, kid, get off.
He was too good, huh? Too good of an opening.
And then also after the show, he said, so when you're out there and they're standing up, tell them to sit down and say, if you think that's good, wait till your Uncle Milty gets out here. And of course, Clint said, I can't say that. And interrupt the standing ovation. So, it was not the greatest situation, but he was an icon. And there are many stories about Milton Berle in the journals of musical and theater history.
Yeah, he had a Saturday Night Live appearance that was so infamous. He was on the show one time in '76 and they never invited him back. But I don't want to sit here and make this the Milton Berle roast. I have to ask you one more. This is just a personal favor. I've always been a huge fan of Jackie Mason, the comedian. I just think he's so underrated and obviously, was so wonderful. A lot of his career, of course, he was blacklisted, and we know that story. But you actually worked with Jackie Mason, but that didn't go very well either. I got to hear this story, Bill. Jackie Mason.
Well, I was hired to do a show. Apparently, Jackie Mason decided he wanted to do something a little more theatrical, something with a book, rather than just going out and doing stand-up. So I was hired to be the musical director for a show that we did at a place in New Jersey. It looked like a big showboat kind of a thing, a riverboat. I forget the name of it. It was on, I think, Union Highway in New Jersey somewhere.
Okay.
And so we rehearsed. I wrote the arrangements. We had a band. We rehearsed, and literally in rehearsal, Jackie could never memorize the book, the script. The night before we were supposed to open, he said, screw this, I can't do it. I'm just going to do my act. And he did. And of course, the audiences loved his acts, but we never got to do a stage show. So yeah, that was my experience with Jackie Mason. One thing that I actually don't know if it was in my book or not, which was a great experience. I got a call to go and meet and spend some time with Mickey Rooney. Mickey, these people I know had written a show called Wow, and it was actually a life-size puppet of Mickey Rooney, and his voice was going to be on tape narrating the show, and he had written some songs for the show. So I remember taking a plane or a train up to Boston, where he was appearing in a show, and he was sitting. I was at the piano. He was sitting next to me, straddling the piano like this, and whispering or singing in my ear the melody of the songs. But they didn't have any chords or any progressions. So he sat and I made the song a song. Of course, not getting any credit for it. They were all had his name on it. But because of his relationship with Judy Garland, there was one song in there called Judy, which was just a beautiful, beautiful song. And though I can't legally take any credit for it, I really helped him write the music to that song. Well, so that's my Mickey Rooney story. I have stories about all these people, but
you do.
You don't have a 3-hour show.
No, we've got to do some next time, and I'm going to file it away to ask you in the future about performing in Monaco for all the people there. Bill Cosby's story, some interesting stuff that I know that up in Reno and some things there. But let's move ahead if we can. Only out of time, so we'll bait the audience. Maybe we can do it next time. You get a call. You and Clint Holmes get a call around 98, 99 from Steve Wynn. That wants you and Clint Holmes to come and open and play the Golden Nugget, I believe. Now this starts your Las Vegas career. Talk about getting that phone call, and now you realize that you're going to become a Las Vegas resident.
Well, yeah, Clint got the call to come to Las Vegas, and at the time I said to Clint, you know, the last place I ever want to live is in Las Vegas. Fast forward, I've been here now for, I guess it's going to be coming on 22 years, and we were here 8 weeks, and I bought a house. So, and I don't plan on living anywhere else. Yeah, but he got the call to come out. Steve Wynn had built a room at the Golden Nugget for Frank Sinatra. After Sinatra was there, it had never really been that successful. And he wanted to bring more people downtown to the Golden Nugget. So we had
Good watchdog.
Stop. We had a 9-month contract, and we came to Las Vegas. Like I say, after about 6 or 8 weeks, I bought a house because I could. Living in New York and LA most of my adult life, I could never, as a musician, afford to buy a home or an apartment or anything in those places. So it was very affordable. I saw one house, and I fell in love with it, and amazingly bought it with 0 down. And because I I had just done a commercial for the Golden Nugget for Clint, and got a nice paycheck. I was able to furnish the house as well. So we opened at the Golden Nugget. The show was really well received in Las Vegas. I don't know if you remember. Were you here then in '99?
I know, but I came and saw the show. I was one of the first. Yes, I saw the show then early, but I was a visitor at the time.
Oh, okay, because there was a commercial here with Clint in the shower singing.
Yes.
And yeah, a lot of people still talk about that commercial. Anyway, we were at the Golden Nugget. After about 7 months, they decided it wasn't as successful as they wanted it to be. So they let us go, but they continued to pay us for the full 9 months. And in the meantime, a few other hotels had negotiated with Clint, and Harris said they wanted our show. A couple of things about that. In the band at the Golden Nugget was Jerry Lopez on guitar and Phil Wickfold on saxophone. And they were in a band called Santa Fe. One night before we, or either before or after we closed at the Golden Nugget, we went to see the band. Clint and I went to see the band, and Santa Fe, which was a 14-piece, just killer band, and still are that today. And we looked at each other and said, that's the band for Harris. And although we couldn't use all 14, we cut it down to I think 9 players at Harris. That was our band. We had the best band in town. And I think to this date, we still had the best band in this town.
Yeah, and your show, you were Entertainers of the Year several years in a row. You had a prominent marquee right there at Harris. I think you went 6 years there, your engagement. And you were just, a lot of people like, who's Clint Holmes? If you didn't live here, you didn't really know the name. It wasn't,
right.
a traditional headliner. But he just through the sheer talent and raw energy and genuine enthusiasm that you both would always show on stage. I think I saw you all 3 or 4 times, and you guys were one of those shows that, even though I'd seen the show before, if I had somebody coming in from out of town and just wanted to deliver a show that we knew they would enjoy, man, we would go see Clint Holmes and the musical director, Bill Fayne. And it was always just a great crowd pleaser. I have to ask you, though, about this. I think you put on, I think the number was, in 6 years, this is an astronomical figure, 1,873 performances. I'm going to repeat that number, 1,873 performances. Now, I would watch you and Clint and members of the band cutting up on stage. And how do you keep it fresh? I mean, how do you go out night after night after night and just keep it alive?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, it was a love affair. I mean, and for me, it was the best musicians I had ever worked with. And that allowed me to do whatever I could and whatever I wanted musically. The other thing is we tried to change about 60 or 70% of the show every year. That kept it fresh for us. It was just joyous. There wasn't, I honestly couldn't say there was ever one night where I said, I don't feel like going to work tonight. It was just, couldn't wait to get on stage. And when you're in a situation, it's almost like doing a Broadway show. You become a family. You hang out. You're in a world that everyone loves. Performing, playing, singing, creating. It was such a creative environment. It was the best of all worlds.
I have to ask you, Bill, one of the great things that I observed that you did, and Clint and a lot of other entertainers in Las Vegas as well, is that when my wife and I would go to charity events around town, and I'm speaking, from 2000 to even to the present, we wouldn't know who would be on the bill as far as performers. And it seemed like you and Clint often, and sometimes both of you, sometimes you performing as one of the tenors, you just always seem to give back to the community. And I always thought that was marvelous, that you gave so much to charity. And now I got to come make this full circle, that you had an event in your life where it came back around to you once, I think in 2010, where there was a big event and it was a Bill Fayne benefit. I mean, this is just the marvelous thing about the community being tight knit and being there for each other. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, the in 2009, I had an operation, a serious operation. I guess I almost died. I was in a coma for a couple of weeks, and I remember on my birthday, December 17th, 2009, they woke me up, and I got a phone call from Clint, who was on stage, and he had the audience sing "Happy Birthday" to me.
Wow!
But I had been out of work for 3-4 months. I remember coming home from the hospital after spending 31 days in the hospital, which was originally only supposed to be 8 days. And I was home for 4 days. My car was repossessed. I had no income, no savings. And so my friend Ed Matthews and Clint and Kelly Clinton Holmes decided to do a benefit for me. And they literally invited everyone in Las Vegas. And it was probably, I don't remember exactly, but it was probably about a 3-hour show. And every entertainer that was performing in Las Vegas on the Strip, all the headliners came and appeared. And except one, which I won't mention, declined. But it literally saved my life, because I hadn't been able to work. And it was in March 2010. And the first thing I actually did after that, in April 2010, Clint and I went to North Carolina to do a new production of the show, the hopeful Broadway show that we had written. And that was the first thing I did after my illness.
Wow. I'm sorry, I moved a little bit here. I need a moment to compose myself. I remember that and the show at the Suncoast, and it was really something. But here you are now, Bill, and I think one of the things that you've said is you don't believe in retirement. I mean, here you are, you're still composing, you're still performing. Obviously, the COVID thing, we have to put that in there, but you're still very active, very much in demand. But it looks like you've maybe refocused a bit of your the way you're looking at things, in that you believe very much in mentoring younger people, younger musicians, being encouraging to them. And man, this is not an easy business to make it in, as you know, and not an easy town to make a living in. Talk about that, please.
Well, a couple of things. As far as retirement goes, I've just had my 10, 11-month retirement, and I'm going to come out of retirement as soon as possible. It's weird, because I have thought about, is this what retirement would be? Sitting at home and watching TV and YouTube and listening to music, and I'm not ready to do that yet, and I don't think I ever will be. As far as mentoring, Clint and I, one of the things that we've done and often talked about is passing it on. The most important thing we can do is pass the torch to the next generation, or the younger people. And I've loved doing that. And through doing that, I have met and worked with some of the most talented young performers. I've worked with kids from 9 years old through their teens into their 20s, seen them grow as artists and created opportunities for these kids where they wouldn't have cabaret or theatrical opportunities. One of the things that I was doing with all the shows I was doing at the Summit Restaurant, my cabaret shows, is I wanted people not just to come and sing songs, but to talk about their dreams and their music and where the songs come from and what they're about. So they get used to not only singing in front of an audience, which is literally 5 feet away from them, but also to learn how to express themselves and to dig in more songs and stories. I think that's the best way I can describe what that was. And I truly love working with these young, talented kids. There are so many. I've said this dozens of times on so many interviews and talking with people. I lived in New York and LA my entire life, but the Las Vegas community is really special because we all support each other. And that's something that you can't find everywhere.
Well, thank you, Bill Fayne, for the gift you've given so many of us all over the world, and especially here in Las Vegas. You're such a joy to have among us. You have many more years ahead, and I can't wait to your next show. I'm going to be right there. If I can get a ticket, maybe I can knock on to get inside a VIP seat. But thank you, Bill, for all you've ever done for us. I know you're going to leave us with a song. You said you would do something. I have no idea what this is, but I want to thank you for joining me.
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, I want to say that the background behind me is a picture of the Smith Center, which everyone in Vegas loves and misses, and hope it comes back stronger than ever. The other thing is I hope to be doing some things coming up virtually. When this whole pandemic started, I was doing some Zoom cabaret shows, which I haven't done in 6 months. But I hope to be doing something in March for Stephen Sondheim's 91st birthday. And I hope anyone that's listening will look for that somewhere around March 22nd, I think is his 91st birthday. But as far as songs, a lot of the songs I've written, I wrote with Clint. This song that I'm going to sing is a song that I wrote both the music and the lyrics. And one of the things in my life is I always have a lot of questions. And this is a song about that. And during this crazy 10, 11 months we've been through, there have been so many questions that we all ask. Anyway, this is called The Way of Life. Why does it take a lifetime to learn how to live? Why do we have to suffer to learn to forgive? Why does it take a rainstorm before the rainbow? Why does it have to hurt so before we can grow? Why must we lose a loved one to learn how to love? Why are we always reaching for help from above. Why does it take a promise to reach for a goal? Why does it take another to make us feel whole? It's just the way of life. It's just the way of love. If there's a lesson learned, it's just to live and forgive and to love every moment you're in. Why are we always reaching for things out of reach? Why are there people preaching the things you can't teach? Why are we always guilty of needing too much? Why is there so much comfort in one loving touch? 'Cause that's the way of life. That's the way of love. If there's a lesson learned, it's just to reach, not to preach, and to touch. Love and not needing too much. Live and forgive and to love every moment. Why question destiny? Now is the place to be. Open your heart and see the face of love. Learning to live takes a lifetime, and it never ends. We can find love in a lifeline, surrounded by friends. So don't be too frightened to question. Don't be embarrassed to share. Don't be afraid of the answers that may not seem fair. 'Cause that's the way of life. That's the way of love. These are the lessons learned. Share and to care and to love. Reach, not to preach, and forgive. Give and to live and to love every moment you live.
Bravo, Bill Fayne. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Wow, what a song. Thank you for taking us out with a beautiful thought and sharing of yourself, Bill. So marvelous. Note to myself, turn the phone off whenever Bill Fayne is singing. Sorry about the phone call that came in there. Dogs and phone calls. Bill Fayne, thank you for being the guest here on Happy Hour. Decided to do this show because I just wanted to just find out more about you. I know people in Las Vegas love you. They want to hear more about you. We can't wait to see you. What a great way to start off 2021. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nolan. And I follow everything that you've been doing and saying, and your restaurant reviews and your sports information. I love it all. And thank you for being a friend.
A friend indeed. Thank you very much, Bill Fayne. Thanks to all of you for watching. We'll see you again next time, I hope. And I'm not sure we can have as good a guest as Bill Fayne, but we had a
Thank
great
you.
time. Thank you, Bill. Good night.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.